From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson
Jr.
Do not forget about the Junior. It's very important to remember the JR at the end of his name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review if you are watching us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And hello once again to those of you watching us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us, and hopefully you stick around for Pelican season because it's going to be a lot of games on this network. All right, I talked about the fire content. We got some fire content. We're back from the mini bye. I had a couple days off. I feel fantastic. It was a beautiful day outside. Made it out to Saints camp. How you feeling today, Andre?
I'm feeling good. You know, with the Saints not playing on Sunday, I got the rare Saturday, Sunday off in the middle of the football season, which is unheard of in the realm of Louisiana sports covering LSU and Saints. You never get a Saturday, Sunday off. But shout out to the Saints for playing on Thursday, so we got a rare, real weekend.
It's the best thing about that game. It's the fact that we had the weekend after because it was not very fun to watch. All right, so we're going to start there where we always start when it comes to the big picture, when it comes to the New Orleans Saints. Back from the bye week, they talked today, open locker room. Dennis Allen gave a press conference. They didn't practice today. They had meetings, extended meetings, which, given where you're at with your team, sometimes you do have a bonus practice, sometimes you don't. But you know, you're dealing with a team that's pretty banged up. I can understand why they wouldn't add to the workload. But nonetheless, they did meet today. They were all there today. So they're back, and the team they're playing, the Chargers, which depending on what time you see this, they would have already won or lost their game against the Arizona Cardinals. They're playing on Monday Night Football. But there was some significant quarterback news, quarterback developments, and that's what we want to go with the big picture today.
Right. Dennis Allen said something that I know is near and dear to a lot of Saints fans' hearts because we read the comments, all 81 of them, and they had a lot of passionate Spencer Rattler fans in there, and those passionate fans are going to be very happy this week because today Dennis Allen said that Derek Carr is progressing. He's getting better. He's getting healthier. There is some optimism behind his health situation. But if Derek Carr is not good to go when the Saints play the Chargers on Sunday, it'll be Spencer Rattler once again making the start. It'll be his third start this season. Now, there has been talk, maybe a few whispers about maybe potentially giving the other quarterback, Jake Haener, a chance since Spencer Rattler lost his 2 starts. Dennis Allen saying, no, we're going to stick with the rookie. Is that the right move, Sean?
Well, first off, let me just say, just after the game, I keep up with what everyone's doing in terms of coverage-wise. Well, we're not the only ones suggesting or that were, I guess, highly critical of Spencer Rattler's play. But he gets his third start if Derek Carr cannot go. First off, let's talk with the positive momentum of Derek Carr throwing on Monday, throwing on Tuesday, and I'm guessing they're going to evaluate that to see if he can do any sort of work on Wednesday. And then at what point would you feel comfortable with him either practicing or not practicing, limited or whatever the case may be, for him to play in a game? I'm sure there's certain thresholds that they have to meet. It just feels like an outside shot this week. That's more likely going to be next week versus Carolina. But for this week, they're probably preparing more for him to not be available, which is obviously understandable. If he's a quick healer, I guess we'll see. But if he can't go, Spencer Rattler is the guy. As for Rattler, well, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious he didn't bomb in the coach's eyes nearly as bad as he bombed in maybe some of our eyes that cover the team. Not totally surprised that they feel this way. I mean, I even said it on Friday that I didn't necessarily have a problem with them playing him on Thursday. I didn't necessarily have a problem with them. If they wanted to go with him another round, then so be it. But you could tell Thursday night in Dennis Allen's press conference, he was pretty quick to defend Spencer Rattler. And then he kind of circled back to it on Friday. And then again, today, he made a pretty definitive statement once again, and once again backed his young quarterback. So the Spencer Rattler camp is obviously feeling pretty good about this. The Spencer Rattler fan club, which it's growing by the day. And look, I love y'all's enthusiasm for the guy. I really do. And at some point, I want to share in your enthusiasm. I really do. I do not want to see anything. I wanted to work out for the best with Spencer Rattler. But honestly here, it sounds like they're giving Rattler a bit of a lifeline, a bit of a pass, a bit of a mulligan, if you will. From Thursday's performance, which was clearly a step down. It was, I mean, outside of the opening throw and outside that scramble that set up the 3-pointer, the field goal. I didn't see much at all I saw kind of a scatterbrained rookie, honestly, in that game as opposed to the first game where he had a really solid first and second quarter and then obviously dropped down in the third and fourth quarter. Look, maybe they're thinking it was a short week, slew of injuries, makeshift offensive line, plus, you lose, I guess Rashica, he was there. No, was he? He didn't play, did he? No,
he didn't play.
No, sorry, he didn't play. I got my dates confused. No, he didn't. And, Rashid Shaheed is obviously out with the meniscus tear, so he's done. So he didn't have any receivers, didn't have an offensive line. Short week against a Broncos team that, was coming off a loss as well, but they were starting a rookie quarterback as well, so it wasn't exactly like it was rookie versus veteran. But my response is simply this. Cool. Cool. I mean, look, I said it last week. I didn't have a problem if they wanted to go in that direction with Spencer Rattler, if they wanted to give him another start based off of what they saw, if they want to get big enough sample size. And at the end of the day, if they feel like he gives him the best chance to win, so be it. God bless. They're paid to make those decisions, so be it. But to me, it's tell me when Derek Carr is ready, because that's truly all that matters, in my opinion. Tell me when Derek Carr is ready. And I hope Spencer Rattler, if he gets his opportunity, it's the best of the 3 games that he's played, and he helps lead the Saints to a victory, because, my God, do they need it? Because that's really what it all boils down to. They've got to figure out a way to get to 3-5, which I think is going to be very, very hard, even with Derek Carr. But if they don't have Derek Carr and it's Spencer Rattler, a rookie making his third start, coming off a rough game, yeah, I could see that being a tough day as well. If it's Rattler, well, here's the thing. You better be ready for the all-out blitz. Yep. Because I went back and rewatched the game again, and then I rewatched the all-22, and it was bad. It was not bad from he was bad. It was at some point in that game, and it was very early on, but by the end of that game, you're seeing the Broncos literally count the blockers and then know they're going to send one more than they can block, and they're just going to see if Spencer Rattler can handle it. And more often than not, you could just see his head swimming, and his natural instinct in those situations is to try to extend and create the play. When the first instinct in that situation, when they're sending more than you can block, look for that hot route, get a big play underneath, similar to what Jake Haener did when he came in for the final 4 or 5 plays in that game, where it was pretty clear he knew he had a plan for when they were going to send the all-out blitz and get the cover 0 on the backside. Cover 0, if you don't know, is man-to-man, and there's no safety, so it's basically one-on-one everywhere. So if you hit the right guy, you got a chance for a big play, and you saw what happened when Haener came in. So hopefully Rattler saw that on film and understands what he needs to do in that situation. I guess the only mild surprise is I thought maybe DA would have a little bit more of a debate, a little bit more of a, hey, let's see how it goes. Let's do some extra film study, maybe get a practice in and just see where this is at. I didn't think he'd come out pretty clearly on a Monday when he was asked about Derek Carr to basically say pretty definitively once again it's Spencer Rattler. But look, it's his job that's on the line, so it's not necessarily if he's going to go with that, he's going to go with that. So be it. But here's the thing with Rattler or if it's Derek Carr, it sounds like Haener's out unless there's another injury, which no one wants. There's a small shred of optimism or maybe positivity where I think Rattler and the Saints can have a little bit of success. Right now will constitute being competitive for 4 quarters, which I hate because it's a freaking professional football, but it is what it is. They've been terrible for the last 3 games. So I think there is a little bit of reason for optimism. And here's why. As I mentioned, depending on when you're watching this podcast, the Chargers are playing right now. Saints played on Thursday. They're playing on a Monday night, and they both play again on Sunday. Similar to what the Saints had to deal with when they had the what was the game? They had the Monday night game from Kansas City to Tampa Bay, and Tampa had the Thursday night game before. Yep. So it's a similar long week versus short week debate. And the Chargers blitz significantly less than their previous 2 teams. Denver is 41% blitz rate. Tampa's 30.5, but that's 30.5 when they just send more than 5. That's not counting the times they send 4, but they fool you with an exotic look where their 3 guys come from one side and they rotate the coverage on the backside, zone blitz them, where technically it counts as 4, so it's not a blitz, but it's still an exotic pressure that clearly he had some problems with. The Chargers only blitz at a 27% clip. I think that's 19th or 20th in the league. So maybe it won't be quite the run for your life feel that it had on Thursday night when it came to Spencer Rattler. More than anything else, though, other reason for optimism is health. I mean, health. If you can get one of these 3 back, either Taysom, Ruiz, or Olave, I think it can bring so much help and just comfort and just a chance to just take a deep breath for Spencer Rattler or whoever's playing quarterback, because those 3 guys are so vital to the offensive execution. But in saying that, it's still going to be hard because it's still number 1 scoring defense, number 6 total defense, number 6 rushing defense, and you got to go to their house, and it's not going to be easy, different time zones, all that kind of stuff. And, of course, you're 2-5, lost 5 straight, and you're not necessarily playing with a whole lot of confidence.
Yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle for sure. And, I will say, first off, I would play Haener.
Yeah, that's fine. You've been consistent with that.
If it came down to it, I think we've seen a lot from Spencer Rattler, and there's a lot of people making, for lack of a better term, excuses for Spencer Rattler.
That's true.
And I think that to a degree, they're accurate. There are a lot of players injured right now. The offensive line is a makeshift offensive line, sure. But that can't be the answer for every problem we've seen from Spencer Rattler.
Exactly.
If you go back and you look, let's start with Tampa. He had 2 interceptions against Tampa. The one he threw to Rashid Shaheed deep in double coverage. Offensive line didn't do anything wrong there.
Nope.
He was in a clean pocket. No pressure whatsoever. He threw a ball in double coverage to Rashid Shaheed.
Yep.
That's not the receivers not being able to get open. The guy's double covered. That's not the offensive line not blocking for him or giving him time. He had time. He threw a deep ball after missing multiple deep shots to Rashid Shaheed. He finally threw a deep shot to Rashid Shaheed in double coverage. He underthrew it and it was picked off. That's not O-line. That's not receivers. Later in that game, the second interception, once again, clean pocket. He had time. He threw off his back foot. He made a bad pass. It was intercepted. That's not receivers. That's not O-line. That's timing. That's a bad decision. That's on Spencer Rattler.
No doubt, 100%.
You go to Denver. He had 2 turnovers against Denver, and it could have been more than that. Let's start with the first possession of the game. When he scrambles out. Now, to your credit, he was forced out by the pressure, but he's forced out of the pocket. A lot of quarterbacks just throw the ball away, chalk it up. This play is not for me. Instead, he looks deep, throws it on the run, once again, in double coverage, underthrown deep. The interception is dropped. That's not on the receiver.
Nope.
That's not on the offensive line. He was out of the pocket. He could have ran. He could have threw it away. He put the ball in danger. That's on Spencer Rattler. You look at the fumble. Now, I didn't play in the NFL, but I talked to people who did play in the NFL. When he was sacked and fumbled that football, there was a blitz. You can identify the blitz and slide protection before the play. That's the quarterback's job. Spencer Rattler did not do that. So again, so in 2 games, he's got 1 touchdown. He's got 4 turnovers. Those 4 turnovers are on him. That's not on offensive line. That's not on receivers. We can't just make excuses for Spencer Rattler because there's so much going on with this team right now.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of situations where you can't say, okay, the offensive line failed him, and Dennis Allen has gone with if when he was protected, he played well, soundbite a lot.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, it's not every problem that Spencer Rattler has encountered in these 2 games has been about protection or been about not having Olave or not having Rashid Shaheed and anything like that. So for 2 games, I feel like we've seen what Spencer Rattler's capable of, and he looks like a rookie drafted in the 5th round to be a backup, which is what he was. We know what he is through 2 games. In my opinion, I think you go with Jake Haener because we do not know what he is. Jake Haener did lead the only touchdown drive for the Saints against Denver. And yes, it was at the end of the game where they
were still sending pressure, though.
They were. Were they playing as fierce a defense maybe as they were in the first quarter, late in the fourth? No, they weren't. But it was the only positive sight from the Saints offense that entire game. You know what Spencer Rattler is and what he has been. You don't necessarily know what Jake Haener could be in the same situation. So I would go with Jake Haener. Now, since the Saints, despite all that, decided to go with Spencer Rattler, I will say this, you got to help him out. Number one thing that can help him out, you got to get the run game going. And you mentioned, I think the Chargers are the 6th ranked run defense right now.
Yep.
The Saints have not been able to run the ball in the last few games. You couldn't run it against Denver. You couldn't run it against Tampa. And you really couldn't run it against Kansas City either. And this whole offense, this Clint Kubiak system that had so much success those first 2 weeks is because you were able to run the ball heavily and keep your quarterback's pass attempts down. I think Derek Carr only threw, 22 passes against Carolina, 16 against Dallas in those 2 blowout wins. That's where you want Spencer Rattler. You don't want him to have to throw 40 passes like he did against Tampa or 35 like he did against Denver. So if you're going to start Rattler, you got to help him out some more. You got to run the ball. You can't get behind 2 possessions in the first quarter.
That's happened in both games.
Exactly. You were down, 17-0 against Tampa. You were down 13-0 against Denver. When you get down like that early, it is difficult to commit to running the ball. And then also the last thing that can help them, you mentioned it at the end of what you said, Taysom Hill, Cesar Ruiz, Chris Olave. Chris Olave entered concussion protocol about a week and a half ago. It would have been about 2 weeks once Sunday hits. If Chris Olave can come back and give him a true number 1 receiver, that would help. Taysom Hill, we know what Taysom Hill has meant in this offense and in this running game, in short yardage situations. Getting Taysom Hill back takes a little bit off of his shoulders. And Cesar Ruiz, he went down in the same game as Eric McCoy went down.
Yeah.
Week 3 against Philadelphia. They put Eric McCoy on injured reserve pretty quickly.
Yeah.
They did not put Cesar Ruiz on injured reserve because they believed that they could get him back. They hoped they could get him back earlier than that 4-week window. Now, obviously, it's past that window, but Cesar Ruiz is a lot closer to coming back than maybe some people realize. And if you can get 1, 2, or maybe even all 3 of those guys back, it will take some pressure off of Rattler's shoulders.
And that's what he needs. Like he's not built to win the game. Like he's not built to carry the team. Like he can be a nice complementary piece at this point in his career if everything else around him was fully functional. And he hasn't had the opportunity to get anything fully functional around him. But even with the stuff he can control, the issues he's having around him, I still think he could have played better as we've laid out in that regard. But if you're going to go with Rattler, I think you probably have a little bit more optimism with getting some guys back, which maybe that's where the line of thinking is. We're getting some guys back. Maybe he'll be able to look a little bit better, and he should. I mean, could you imagine if you got Ruiz, Taysom, and Olave back this week?
Yeah.
How fantastic that would be for a young guy you could just depend on. Or look, you can go back to the Taysom. Just let him line up at quarterback and get him like 9 or 10 snaps a game right there. I mean, that's an asset that you had that not a lot of teams have across the NFL. So I think it's imperative. Well, it's not imperative. Of course, it's obvious you got to get them all healthy. But if you get those guys back, that should provide a boost to Spencer Rattler. And maybe that's the thought process. Hey, if we get him some semblance of our core guys back, well, let's see how he does with that versus 2 games where basically he really didn't have much. He had to miss Olave after the first play, the second play of the game, his first start. Didn't have the offensive line the first start, and obviously didn't have Shaheed, and it looked like his head was swimming. But I also think, if he's gonna line up this week, and he's not gonna fear what he sees post snap is not what he saw pre-snap, and it just gets all jittery, and it's going to be basically pre-snap, post-snap. It's pretty much going to be the same. I could see him having a little bit of success just in terms of not being so scatterbrained. It was so obvious, like I said before, in the second half of the game. It was probably the whole game, but really when it jumped out was in the second half where the Broncos are just like, all right, we're going to send more than they can block because he's not going to be able to find the hot read, and he's not going to be able to, it's just going to be just a chaos for the rest of the game, and that's exactly what it was. And there were times I kind of felt bad for him because you could just tell the Broncos knew he couldn't handle it, and they were just going. So hopefully he took a week to look it over and understands what he has to do in those situations, because while the Chargers do not blitz as much as those other 2 teams, and they're probably going to stay true to their DNA, they're going to throw a few more in there just because they know this guy is pretty vulnerable against the blitz.
Definitely. And I agree with what you started off by saying that Derek Carr is the starter on this team. And this situation reminds me of something that happened in Carolina. First 2 games, Bryce Young starts. and everybody nationally was saying the offensive line is bad, the receivers are bad, nobody could succeed in this offense. The Panthers, when they benched Bryce Young after week 2, it's not Bryce's fault. It's everybody around Bryce's fault. Andy Dalton, a veteran, just like Derek Carr is a veteran. Derek Carr's not a top 10 quarterback by any measure.
Right.
You could argue he's not top 15. He's somewhere in the middle,
right.
An average level quarterback, but he's a veteran.
Right.
Andy Dalton, once again, nowhere near the top 15 of the league, but he's a veteran.
Yeah.
You put Andy Dalton in the same situation Bryce Young, a young player, was in, and all of a sudden, the offense looks competent. They win week 3 against Las Vegas. They give Cincinnati a run for their money.
Yeah.
The offense looked good against Cincinnati. They gave the Atlanta Falcons a run for their money. Now, they've looked pathetic at times, too, including Sunday against the Washington Commanders and Marcus Mariota.
Without Jaden, right.
Without Jaden Daniels. But the offense has a little bit of life just from inserting a veteran quarterback. Derek Carr, as a veteran, would know how to handle these situations a little better than Spencer Rattler would. That's why all the people who are saying, oh, you need to stick with Spencer for the season. I don't think you need to do that. But speaking of veteran, though.
Go ahead.
Saints are bringing in a veteran.
Yeah.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the former Kansas City Chief, is reportedly signing with the Saints to join that wide receiving core. How much of an impact did he have?
I think you just count them up. Count the receivers. Even if you get Olave back, you lost your number 2. So who is your number 2? I mean, we've cried for how desperate this team is for a 3. Now you don't have your 2. I think Valdez-Scantling come in to be a 2. Honestly, I mean, who else is there? And, he's the guy that he's got. Look at it. Just Google his yards per catch. He's a big play guy. He's a big receiver, too. So, I believe 6'3".
Speedster,
so
too.
He played his best year yards per catch wise was 2020 when I think he had Aaron Rodgers, and his best year reception wise was 2022 when he had Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. But look, he's a big play guy. He's not going to have a high volume of receptions, but he's going to have big plays, big chunk yardage. So we'll see how he blends into the system, especially you don't have your big post guy, and you know that big post is a big part of what they do, especially when everyone comes back and they want to run that play action bootleg type stuff that they love to run with that big post. When it's been to Rashid Shaheed pretty much all season. So with him not there, someone's got to step in. So yeah, I think he's got a great opportunity here to come in. And if he picks up the system and picks up the terminology, get on the field fairly well, because I look at this offense and I'm thinking, they don't have a third wide receiver, and they don't really have a dynamic tight end. So think about the disadvantage it puts you in when you go the 3 receiver, 11 personnel set, or the 2 tight end, 12 personnel set, which are the 2 most common. You're kind of a man down in each one. Whatever advantage you would get from those personnel groupings, you really don't have, because you've got 2 pretty big, I don't want to say holes, but you're not as good as you could be at either one of those spots. So Valdez-Scantling can hopefully come in and provide some sort of production. But I do think when you really lay it out and you just add the playmakers and you scratch out the ones that are gone, you see why Taysom Hill's so valuable. You see why Taysom Hill is needed so badly for Clint Kubiak. And I think it's just Clint Kubiak is Superman with Taysom Hill. Without him, I don't know, name a comparison, because he is not it when Taysom Hill is not there. So he should be ecstatic if Taysom can return. And I asked Dennis Allen today if there's a chance for Taysom this week. He said there is a chance. Yes, pretty definitively. So and he's coming up on that 4-week window as well. So, and it's not they chose to not do IR with him and just look at the games with him, look at the games without him. So I think that's a huge boost if he can return. And I'm curious how quickly Valdez-Scantling gets on the field, because we saw Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper both get on the field with their new teams after getting traded to their teams respectively, and then made some plays as well. So made some catches. So there's certainly, look, man, when you banged up and you get some fresh blood, it's like, yeah, man, we need you. Come on in, get going right away. So and they've had the longer week, and he got here today and he signed today. So hopefully he can contribute right away, because man, they need it. They just need production from anywhere they can find it, especially on both sides of the ball. But offensively, when it comes to the passing game, they can just use another pass catcher. Yeah,
and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, MVS, he's a speedster. And I think in a perfect world for the Saints, he can step in and play your Rashid Shaheed role. Because when Shaheed went down, we asked, who's that guy? Who's that guy who can get deep like Rashid was getting? It's not Bub Means. It's not Equanimous St. Brown. It's not Cedric Wilson. Maybe it could be Mason Tipton. He's got some speed to him, but he hasn't been able to do that, whether he hasn't been getting the opportunities to run those deep routes. Or against Kansas City, if you look back to the play Derek Carr got hurt, he was blitzed. He threw a deep shot to Tipton, and it was on the money.
And it was a moonshot, too. It wasn't like one of those where you had to run under it. It was there. You know what I'm saying?
And it went right through Tipton's hands. You know, he hasn't necessarily been able to be that deep threat and maybe give you enough confidence that he can fill in for Rashid Shaheed and be that guy. So in a perfect world, MVS can step in and be that guy after the play action. You look up 40 yards down the field. It used to be, there goes Rashid Shaheed. Maybe now it's, there goes Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and the Saints need that desperately right now.
I mean, they needed that before. I mean, they're not necessarily a guy that runs a big post, but they needed a third receiver even before Shaheed went down. Yeah. So, can he make contested catches? He's a big guy. You would think he would, but the reception totals in year in and year out fairly low, leads me to believe maybe he's really not that guy. But who knows? Maybe it doesn't matter. He's a receiver. The Saints need him. The Saints need a pass catcher here within their offense. So anything. We got any questions? Because I know we had a couple of questions emailed into us.
Real quick, this one actually on the defensive side. Mm-hmm. Do you think Paulson Adebo is completely done with the Saints, or should we re-sign him as Joshua Gus from Gentilly?
I think he's done. I mean, we got a minute left, and I'm going to try to make this quick. I think he's done. I think the penalties were certainly a problem. We haven't really given enough respect to the fact that, you know how hard it is to break your femur? Mm-hmm. That's the strongest bone in the body, isn't it? Yeah. I remember that from the old biology days. He broke it. That is incredibly difficult just to break. I can only imagine the grueling rehab process, which I think will hurt his free agency. But I don't see the Saints re-signing him. I could see them turning to Kool-Aid McKinstry and then just drafting the DB, because they seem to have been they've connected a little bit when it comes to Taylor, Kool-Aid, and obviously Paulson Adebo. So I think his days as a Saint are done.
I agree, and maybe it can change depending on what Kool-Aid does for you in this second half of the season. But if Kool-Aid gives you confidence in him, with the injury that Adebo has and the production or lack thereof that he was giving you before, I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints moved on from him.
Yeah, I could see that. All right, that'll do it for us today. For Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.